Timisoara. Let's say you take a warm Romanian ciorba, throw there a stale Serbian pleškavica, add some leftover Hungarian goulash, and finally top it up with German sauerkraut. And at the end, you surprisingly get something delicious. This would be a very terribly made metaphor for the city of Timișoara, a diverse place filled with different cultures, Christian denominations and ethnicities, the fates of which have been intertwined throughout the city's history. Although Timișoara is only the 5th city by population in Romania, it manages to compete with its bigger brothers like Cluj or Iași in the economic, technological, educational and especially the cultural spheres, being granted the title of a European Capital of Culture as of 2023. The historical center of the city consists of buildings in various styles, being mostly dominated by the Austrian and Hungarian Art Nouveau, that's why the city is also called Little Vienna, but also with some eclectic and Baroque style houses. And anywhere you turn your head, you will see a piece of Middle European culture there, be it the Brook House in Vienna Secession style, or streets named after Hungarian politicians. To understand the reason behind all of this cultural variety of the city, let's take a look at its history. Being pushed by various Tatars and Pechenegs, the Hungarians, or Magyars as they call themselves, arrived in the Carpathian Basin in the 9th century and established the Kingdom of Hungary, which later included a beautiful but not that well protected territory called Banat. In order to secure it, a fortress was built in a quite strategic location in the center of Banat, surrounded by swampy areas that they called Timisoara, which translates from Hungarian as the castle on the Timis river. And of course, as the name implies, the city lies on the river called Bega, the actual Timis river being like 10 kilometers away from the city. But at the time, Bega was called the Little Timis, so the name still checks out. The city grew rapidly in influence in the following centuries and even became the capital of the Hungarian kingdom for several years. The fortifications were further strengthened when Banat became an arena for battles between the Christians and Ottoman Muslims in the 14th and 15th centuries, withstanding multiple attacks and sieges, until 1552, when Banat plain was conquered by the Ottomans and the star and crescent flag was arbored on the walls of Timisoara. The city was under Ottoman rule for 164 years and was enjoying a special status, similar to other cities in the empire, such as Budapest and Belgrade. Towards the beginning of the 18th century, the sick man of Europe was getting sicker and sicker until the Ottoman Empire lost the city of Timisoara to some inbreds, and Banat became a province of the Habsburg Empire. Very few historical buildings from the Ottoman era of the city survive up to this day, and this is partly because of the lazy way the Habsburg army conquered the city, by sieging it for 48 days and covering it with continuous waves of heavy bombardments, destroying the majority of the buildings. After the Ottomans fled, Banat became a province of the Habsburg Empire, the Hungarian language was introduced for administration, and the authorities from Vienna started the process of Germanification of the city. Germans were really handy craftsmen when it came to industry and trade. As such, thousands of Catholic Germans from Württemberg, Swabia, Palatinate, Luxembourg, Hesse, Alsace, Lorraine, Switzerland, Austria were sent to Timisoara as colonizers. Meanwhile, the city was being ravaged by an epidemic of cholera. Don't forget that Timisoara was built on a literal swamp. And because of that, many immigrants became unalive in only 3 months after arriving. The growth of the population was maintained only by more waves of immigration, and after some time, more than half the population of the city were Catholic Germans. And while the new majority of pale lager drinkers and bratwurst eaters contributed a lot to the modernization of the city, the Serbian and Romanian minorities were segregated to live in the suburbs, while only the Catholics were allowed to enter the fortress walls. But no worries, the 1848 is approaching. The springtime of people will soon spread throughout Europe, and the minorities of Timisoara will certainly rise for their rights. Nope. During the revolution, the Hungarian nationalists tried to conquer the city by taking it under a siege for 114 days. But failed, and the city and the whole territory of Banat were demoted to a simple province and property of the crown. Nevertheless, the revolution sparked the national spirit of Romanians from all over Transylvania and Banat, including those from Timisoara, which was fueled by the unification of the Romanian principalities in 1859, but also by the fast economic and cultural growth of the city. In that period, various factories were built, from iron forges and brick factories to beer breweries and chocolate factories. Telegraph and telephone lines were drawn in the city, paved roads, and horse-drawn trams followed by electric ones. Timisoara even became the first city with electric street lighting. Over time, the city became a local economic center and gradually lost its military importance. So, in 1899 began the demolition of the fortifications, and Timisoara lost its status as a fortress city. The 20th century started with a bang, namely with the First World War, in which the Austro-Hungarian Empire ended its existence in 1918 and its former territory started to crumble. On 31st October the same year, the representatives of the four main ethnicities of Timisoara, Romanians, Serbs, Germans and Magyars, gathered in the military barracks and decided to proclaim the, wait for it, Banat Republic, with the capital in Timisoara. This new state was meant to function as a cantonal confederation and prevent the partition of the territory by the Romanian and Serbian nationalistic movements. The leader of the self-proclaimed republic was a convinced socialist, so they didn't bother about the design of the flag and just made it a plain red rectangle. The only single country to recognize the Banat Republic's independence was Hungary, because it sought to merge the territory in the future. Sounds uncannily familiar? Basically, we were this close to having a Balkan socialist Switzerland, but it didn't go so well. Banat was split between the neighboring countries, and in 1919, Timisoara finally became part of Romania. A characteristic monument of Timisoara after the liberation from Ottoman rule would be Teresia Bastion, which is the last remaining bastion of the Austro-Hungarian fortress of Timisoara. After the Habsburg army conquered the fortress from the Ottomans in 1716, it was decided to rebuild the entire fortress as the Turkish fortifications could not cope anymore with the new fighting techniques of the era. The newly reconstructed fortress was planned to have 9 bastions, the Teresia Bastion being the first one to be built. But first, for those for whom the term bastion triggers a wave of traumatic memories of the dark age that 2017 was, a bastion is a structure that bulges outwards from a fortification, in our case, the wall of a fortress. Initially, this building was erected as a ravelin, which is a structure that is not connected to the main fortress, being located in the front of the walls and surrounded by water canals. But after 10 years, the ravelin was incorporated into the fortification wall and was given the name Teresia Bastion, in honor of the Archduchess Maria Teresia of Austria. This structure had a lot of usable rooms along its entire length, and because of that, over time, the bastion housed a lot of cool and mostly useful kinds of stuff, like the Roman Catholic diocese of the city, several workshops, a warehouse, a printing house, a TikTok house, and schools of any kind. After the defortification of the city at the end of the 19th century, they finally nerfed Bastion, but because it already had so many uses, Teresia Bastion was the only fortress structure that was not demolished. After 2 restorations, the first in 1968 and the second in 2008, the Teresia Bastion was transformed into a pleasurable pedestrian area surrounded by well-preserved brick walls, which have behind them several cute cafes, museums, and also a neat cultural space. Also, the northern flank of the bastion was partially removed and the porticos inside the southern wall were fortified to build a car street through the bastion. Another structure as imposing as the bastion is located on the north side of Victory Square, a giant building with a facade whiter than the girls in a Starbucks, looking directly at the sun in the noon, making it nearly impossible to record decently due to high exposure. And that's a big shame, since the Palace of Culture is an emblematic building of the city of Timisoara. The palace's history starts with another building, the old theater of Timisoara, which was destroyed by Hungarian revolutionaries. After that, at the initiative of the then city mayor, the collection of funds for the construction of the new theater started. And one of the ways to raise funds was selling the theater boxes of a theater that was not yet even built. Imagine pre-ordering a balcony. Nevertheless, after 3 years of construction, the new theater was finished in 1875, and as any cultural institution that respects itself, the palace resisted for a whole 5 years without being destroyed by fire. After the restoration in 1890, the facade of the building was completed by the addition in the dedicated niches of 4 statues of Greek muses. What? You see only 2 statues in the picture? Well, that's because the other 2 mysteriously disappeared during renovation, and no one knows for sure where. But knowing that Timisoara will become a Romanian city in 30 years, we can safely assume that they were stolen. We can also assume that the addition of the muses brought upon the theater the blessing of the Greek gods, since the palace resisted without a fire for more than 3 decades. And they were edging this fire pretty well, because when the fire broke down in 1920, the theater was completely destroyed and it took several days to extinguish. After the reconstruction in 1923, the building was finished by adding a whole half dome on the roof that contained a basin full of water for obvious reasons. After that, the theater started housing several museums and the Academy of Fine Arts, so it was renamed from a theater to the Palace of Culture. Over time, the palace started to be surrounded by newly erected taller buildings, and in order to keep the focus on the palace, it was decided to drastically remake the facade to give it more monumentality. And as a solution, they reshaped it to look like they forcefully pushed a whole Victory Arch inside the building, giving it the appearance that we are more familiar with now. This new, more simplistic yet more imposing version of the facade sparked a lot of controversies at its time, as it was said that the architect Duiliu Marcu was inspired by the Italian fascist style. In 2003, the sides of the palace were restored to their pre-1928 version, and there are still people wishing for a full restoration to its Viennese look, being speculated that the statues of the two muses are still behind the walls of the arch. At the other end of Victory Square lies the Orthodox Cathedral of Timisoara, the Banat region's metropolis and the second tallest church in Romania, being beaten only by that abomination currently being erected in Bucharest. After Banat was finally united with Romania in 1919, there arose the need to encourage orthodoxy in the region because the previous Austro-Hungarian administration was only favorable to the Catholics, and because there was no clearly representative Orthodox church in Timișoara, it was decided to build a whole new cathedral near one of the most important intersections in the city. The construction started in 1936 and ended in 1941, but the church was inaugurated only after the end of the war in 1946, in the presence of various state officials and cult heads, but also of the last monarch of Romania, Michael I. The church really stands out from the rest of the buildings in the historical center, as it was built in the Neo-Moldavian style, in order to accentuate the Orthodox in its name. The style also borrows some elements from the late Renaissance, Ottoman and Byzantine architecture, like niches under the eaves, vaults and discs. From above, you can see that the main tower reaches a height of 90 meters, and also the beautiful green and golden mosaic tiles that reflect the motifs from the Banat carpets. A similar carpet can also be seen in the interior of the church, which also has the typical cross shape for a Byzantine-style church, and as any Orthodox church that respects itself, the walls are filled with excessive mural paintings, columns, balconies, and of course a giant 22-karat golden iconostasis. It's kinda ironic that the inauguration of the pompous Orthodox Church coincided with the start of the communist era in Romania and by extension Timișoara. After World War II, Romania found itself under the occupation of the Soviet Union as the sole representative of the Allies, and in 1947 became a socialist country after the forced abdication of the king. For Timișoara, this came with the usual package of communist totalitarian benefits: Soviet troops terrorizing the local population until they retreated in 1958, forced collectivization, draconic repressions, food rationing, and a bunch of copy-pasted panel houses. Which is not necessarily that bad, as they were affordable and fast to build, but god are they ugly, especially in contrast with the architecture of the previous era. Being on the western side of Romania, Timișoara was more prone to receiving radio waves from Yugoslav and Hungarian posts and learning about the political changes in the Eastern Bloc. So, to the end of the 1980s, the revolutionary spirit was especially high here, and any banal incident could have sparked a revolt. And that incident was the eviction of Laszlo Tokes from the Reformed Church of Timișoara. Tokes was an assistant pastor in Timișoara and was already known as an adversary of Ceausescu's totalitarian regime, giving sermons in which he opposed many ideas of the communist government. Naturally, this drew the attention of Securitate, the Romanian secret police, and it was only a question of time when Tokes would be evicted. The thing is, Tokes was just broadcasting the anti-communist ideas that were already lingering in the minds of Timișoara citizens, and the news about his eventual eviction provoked a protest against the decision, and a human chain was formed around his block on 16 December 1989. Over time, this protest sparked a wave of revolts all over the city, which resulted in the declaration of Timișoara as the first Romanian city liberated from communists on December 20th, and the start of the revolution in the whole country. During the revolt, tens of thousands of people were chanting anti-communist slogans in the center of the city, and as the outcome of confrontation with the authorities, 126 people died, hundreds were wounded, and bullet marks can still be observed on some facades on the buildings of Victory Square. Today, Timișoara is one of the leading Romanian cities in the economic and cultural spheres, with proud citizens who carry on the diverse and convoluted history of this place. Timisoara is not perfect, of course, suffering from diseases typical to many Romanian cities, but at least it has cats, no less than 2 even, one of them being extremely polite and well educated. So let that confirm that Timisoara is undoubtedly a beautiful and interesting city that certainly deserves your visit.
Bani, de unde aveți bani? Bani.